We are still on the topic of eyewitness testimony, and today's lesson will be still focused on misleading information, but it will be on the evaluation and then some exam questions to go with it. So for this lesson you will need, however you've been writing your notes, whether that be into the booklet or on the computer or on a piece of paper, you will also need another sheet or another document to do your starter on and then to do the exam questions on afterwards. So we have two starters today. The first one is a quick fire questions. So these are on topics that you've done throughout the year, and then the second one is more linked to last lesson. So 10 questions. I'm going to pause for 30 seconds or so after each one. If you need longer, pause the video and then I'll do the answer for each one after that. If you don't know the answer, I want you to write that question down, and that is your revision topic that you need to focus on today or tomorrow. So number one, how many experimental methods are there, and name them? Go. So the answer then, there is 4 experimental methods. They are lab, field, natural, quasi. Number 2, how many experimental designs are there? Name them. Go. So the answer then, there are 3. That is independent groups, repeated measures and matched pairs. Number 3, name as many overall research methods as you can. Go. So the main ones then, experiments, observations, correlations, self-reports. You could have gone for case study, I'll let you have that one, meta-analysis just about, but the 4 main ones, experiments, observations, correlations, self-reports. Number 4, name the 5 sampling methods and then pick one to describe how to conduct it. So you should have opportunity, which is asking those who are free and readily available. Volunteer, which would be putting an advertisement through a poster and asking people to come to a certain place at a certain time. There will be random, where you will get a list of people and randomly pick through a name generator or through a lottery style. There will be systematic, and that will be a list of people and every nth person, so every third or every fourth, and then you've got stratified, and that would be finding a subsection that is proportionate in terms of percentage to the general population. Number 5, give the 3 measures of central tendency. So I've thrown this one in there because central tendency is the word that the examiners will use, and that will throw you off. All it means is mean, mode, median. Number 6, how many participants were there in Milgram's original study? So the answer is 40, all male between 20 and 50 years old. Number 7, where did Zimbardo conduct his study? And that is Stanford University. Hopefully we all got that one. Number 8, who conducted a study on Glasgow babies about stages of attachment? So I've thrown an attachment one in there because I know everyone loves it and it was quite a long time ago. That's Shafran Emerson. Number 9, what animal did Harlow use in his attachment study? That is monkeys. And number 10, what are the mediational factors as an assumption of social learning theory? So what are the 4 mediational factors under that assumption? So this is the one that spells out arm. So attention, retention, motor reproduction, motivation. So you must first pay attention to it, then you must memorise it for retention. Motor reproduction, you must have the ability to do it, and motivation, you must want to do it as well. So those quick fire recap questions, we'll keep doing little quick verse questions like that just to refresh our memories. Starter number 2 links to last lesson. So we have got a scenario. We need to work in our A02 a little bit. So scenario, a psychologist carried out a field experiment to investigate the accuracy of eyewitness testimony. Participants were pupils and parents attending a school concert. Just before the concert began, 2 professional actors had an argument on the stage. During the argument, one actor pushed the other actor, and then both actors left the stage. Some of the audience were approached as they left the concert and were asked to take part in an experiment. Those who agreed were taken to a quiet room and were asked some questions about the argument. Some participants, the questions included, did you see the man in glasses push the other man? In fact, neither man was wearing glasses. Participants were then asked to describe the argument in their own words. So 2 questions. A, what is a field experiment? B, suggest why the question about a man in glasses was included. So 4 marks, 6 minutes, pause it, see where you get up to. So question A then, there is what is a field experiment, 2 marks. You need to make sure that you still say that the independent variable is manipulated, but the field experiment, the thing that you need to put in for field experiment is that it is in a more realistic setting. So don't say it's in a field, it is in a more realistic or real life setting would be fine for that one. But you need to make sure you put the independent variable is still manipulated. B, suggest why the question about a man in glasses is included. So 2 marks, you would mention that the man in glasses question is a leading question and it is to test how accurate the recall of that participant is. You could have also have said that it is to see whether memories could be implanted, to see whether there's a response bias, to see whether substitution has an effect, anything like that you could have gone for. It's only 2 marks, make sure you mention that it's a leading question. Just for a little bit of fun whilst you've got it then. Additional question, what sampling method was used here? Have a think about it. What evidence have we got? So let's have a look then. It says some of the audience were approached as they left the concert. Just here. I'm not very good at drawing with this. But it says some of the audience were approached as they left the concert. That makes an opportunity because they were free and readily available at that time. So just make sure you're always linking back to the question. This one, not so much of a full link needed for the answers to your questions, but it will be needed whenever there's a scenario and further questioning. So let's get on with the lesson then. A bit of a quick recap again on the misleading information that we did last lesson. So misleading information is split into leading questions and post-event discussion. For leading questions, we have the 2 studies by Loftus and Palmer. The first one, 45 students with the 5 critical questions. The second one has 150 different students, 2 critical questions compared to a control. So they were split into 3 groups of 50. Then we've got post-event discussion study by Gabbett, and that was inaccurate information after discussion versus a no discussion control. And there was 71% inaccuracies in the discussion group, none in the no discussion group. So that's just a bit of a recap, make sure you know what studies we're on about in our evaluation. So evaluations then. First one, I've done a little bit more framework for you. So one strength of Loftus and Palmer is that the research was conducted in a lab setting. For your E, you could describe any extraneous variables that they could have controlled and standardised procedures used. So standardised procedures is things like they were all watched the same film. They were asked the same question apart from the critical question. They can control the noise levels, the volume. There are many things that they could have controlled. In your C, what can we therefore establish? And what were they able to do because of these standardised procedures? So it's a lab setting one that we're quite familiar with. Write your PEC for that one. Another strength is that they are extremely useful. In your E, give results from Loftus and Palmer. So I'd give the miles per hour for the smashed and the miles per hour for the contacted. So we now understand the consequences of this in the real world. Eyewitness testimony can be serious and can lead to inaccurate information if leading questions are used. In your C, it's a strength because it highlights the importance of how police officers word their questions when gathering eyewitness testimonies. It led to the development of the cognitive interview, which we will do next week. Why is that a good thing? If leading questions are used, that can lead to a lot of inaccuracies, which might lead to what? So they could identify someone with glasses, for example, and it was someone without, might lead to a wrong conviction. They'll link that to the economy and the criminal justice system. So they are your two strengths. Make sure you've got those in there. And now your two weaknesses. First one is the sample is unrepresentative and cannot be applied universally. What are issues with that sample? So give the sample. What are the issues with it? There are a few options you could go for. You could go for the approximate ages and link to driving experiences. We've got a different study by Rose who found accuracy differences in groups of people who are 18 to 25 compared to those who are 55 to 78. So age could have played a factor. It might not be the question. And describe why that's an issue. Think of your key terms to do with using the same class, culture or country and what that means that we can't generally do. And then your next weakness is conducted in a highly controlled artificial environment. I want you to use Gabbett for this one. We've used Loftus and Palmer for the last three. We need to try and link in Gabbett as well. So link to that. How is that different to real life? And then describe why that's an issue with things like ecological validity. You can also mention demand characteristics. And you could also counter-argue that with, but it does give us a good idea as it's a controlled setting, gives us more valid results which might be more useful for conducting further research. So remember, you can counter-argue, just try not to repeat yourself too much on those. So that is our 4 PECs fully done. Just want to have a little bit of exam practice to finish off. So exam question, it is 12 marks, so I want you to time yourself 18 minutes. If you finish before, that's fine, but if you get to 18 minutes, I want you to stop. Now, try and do this without your notes. We have just done it in the past few days, so make sure that you try and do it without and see how you get on. So the question, a researcher carried out an experiment to investigate misleading information. Participants were shown a photograph in which a man and a woman were talking. The photograph was then taken away and the participants were asked questions about it. Participants were randomly allocated to condition 1 or condition 2. Participants in condition 1 were asked, how old was the youth in the photograph? Participants in condition 2 were asked, how old was the man in the photograph? So now you've got 3 questions. A, why is question A an example of misleading information? That's 2 marks, should take you about 3 minutes. B, name an appropriate experimental design. Explain why a repeated measures design would be unsuitable. So 2 parts of this question, it's 3 marks. Name an appropriate experimental design would be 1, and it's name. So remember, you don't have to do a full description, it says name in the question. Explain why a repeated measures design would be unsuitable. That's 3. So make sure you write a lot more for that. It's an explain. You need justification and evidence to back it up. And then we've put this one as E because I've took a few questions out in between. Describe at least one other research study into misleading information. In your answer, you should include details of what participants were asked to do and what results were found. So that one should be taking you the longest amount of time. It's 12 marks, 18 minutes. Pause it, time yourself, see how you get on. So let's have a look at our mark scheme then. So for A, it is A02, which means it's all application. So you'd get 1 mark for identifying the word youth as an issue. So it refers to a younger age. For 2 marks, you need a little bit more. So you need to say it's because the word youth implies that someone is younger, which would influence an answer, in comparison to man, which makes suggest he is a little bit older. So make sure you don't just put the word youth makes it leading. Why? How does it make it leading? What might that do to someone's answer? And then for B, it's A03, so it's a bit of the evaluation. So like I said, 1 mark for name. So independent groups. And you could have got away with the unrelated. We know the unrelated now is for our stats testing. You could have got away with that. You could have gone for matched pairs E as well. You just need to put one of them, and then it's sort of a bit of a justification. So for the other 3 marks, it's 1 mark for putting independent groups or matched pairs. A repeated measures design can't be used because participants cannot take part in both conditions. That wouldn't affect their answer to the second question that they would be asked. You could put that it may get order effects, could lead to demand characteristics, it would affect their answer, reducing the validity, but you need to justify why. So you need to, for 1 mark, say a repeated measures design would mean participants taking part in both conditions for 1. That would change their answer to the second question, for example, for 2, which could lead to demand characteristics, reducing the validity. So it's a little bit more evaluation, you need to discuss it a little bit more for those 3 marks. And then the last question, E, it says candidates must select a research study which relates to misleading information. The likelihood is that candidates are to refer to Loftus and Palmer. Other relevant research would be Loftus and Palmer's second study. You can also use Gabbett. It doesn't say it explicitly in here, but if you use Gabbett, that is absolutely fine. The mark scheme names a few. It says at the bottom, credit any other relevant research, so it doesn't matter which you went for. It mentions some that we haven't done, and that's absolutely fine. Real and Cutshall we do in the next lesson anyway, but I'd go for Loftus and Palmer generally speaking because it is a key study. You need to know it in a lot more detail, so it'll be easier to write about. So make sure you've included details of the participants, how many there were, what type of person were they. You need to include details of what happened during the study, and you need to include the results. If you miss the results out, you will get an absolute maximum of 4 marks at an absolute maximum. It states in the question you have to use your results and say what the results were. So make sure you put as much detail as you possibly can. Check back to your previous page, and whichever study that you chose to do, make sure you included as much information as you possibly can, and then give yourself a mark out of 12 for those questions. And that can be sent to me, please, either as a screenshot or just a number, that's fine. I'll check over. If you send me the screenshot, make sure your marking's right, and anything that you need to change, I will let you know. So lastly, we have done a lot of key studies recently, and I need you to make sure you're checking it over regularly. I know I say this every single time, but the more rehearsal you do, the more checking over, even if it's for 20 minutes every day or something like that, that will improve your ability to recall this information a lot more. Next lesson will still be on eyewitness testimony, but we'll be looking at the effects of anxiety on eyewitness testimony. So make sure you are comfortable with everything else you've done in eyewitness testimony so far. As usual, any questions, let me know and I'll reply to you as soon as I can.